Hello and welcome to this little webinar on treating flu symptoms using homeopathic medicine, and not only homeopathic medicine, but homeopathic principles. My name's Anne Manning. I'm a homeopath. I've been practicing here in Sydney for about 17 years. And I'm just going to share the screen because I have a PowerPoint presentation that goes along with this, and I'll just get it set up. PowerPoint view slideshow. I'll just put me in the little corner. There we go. Okay, and look, I was inspired to put this presentation together because there's so much talk at the moment about the severity of the current flu season. We've already, heard of quite a number of people who have done fared very poorly with the flu. And in my experience, in my homeopathic practice, I've seen again and again that the well-selected homeopathic remedy will relieve symptoms of flu very effectively and really shorten the duration of any illness. So I very much wanted to make this material available to people, to anyone who's interested. What I'm sharing today is part of a much larger course that I teach, Natural Healing at Home, which covers using homeopathy for first aid, for colds, flus, for stomach bugs and other minor ailments. So what I'm going to do first, I need to give you some background into the homeopathy. Homeopathy works on very different principles than conventional medicine, or from most ways of healing. So we need to understand a little bit about how it works in order to be able to use it effectively. And then I'm going to describe very briefly the sort of symptom picture you would expect for the six, what I see as the most common flu presentations. And they're the 6 remedies that I've put together to make a little mini kit, if you're interested to purchase that. I believe I've sent you notes that are basically a PDF of the information that's available in this slideshow. So you've got the material to hold on to. And also I'll say it now, no, I won't, I'll say it later. Let's get going. Okay, now I've got to change my slide. Okay, so some background about homeopathy. Very simple points. Homeopathy is regarded as a complete system of medicine that is non-toxic, quick-acting and gentle. And what I mean by complete system is homeopathy treats the whole person. Not so much an issue when we're looking at something like flu, but even still, we're interested in everything that you're experiencing. If you come to see me with allergies, I'm also wanting to understand your nature, what stresses you, how you respond to different things. Even, it may be hay fever allergies, but I'm still interested to know your stomach, how your stomach deals with food, processes food, etc. So always we're looking at treating the whole person, the broadest picture as possible. And homeopathy has been around for over 200 years. In 1810, a German doctor, Samuel Hahnemann, published sort of the homeopathic Bible, in a way, the Organon of Medicine. And it contains a number of aphorisms, which are sort of principles that homeopathic medicine is based on. And what's really impressive is the principles that he set forth then are still apply today. They've been enlarged upon, expanded on by various different practitioners, but the essential format of homeopathy is the way it has always been. And back in reference to the first point, I think it's about the 3rd aphorism, he says that medicine should be safe, rapid and gentle. And that's what I say. Definitely homeopathic remedies are non-toxic. They don't have any harmful side effects, and generally the response, you notice the effect pretty quickly, and particularly if you've got an acute condition, you've got intense symptoms, we generally see that they come down, you know, within half an hour of taking a remedy for sure. The next point I make is that homeopathy is understood to work by stimulating the body's innate power to heal itself. And saying that, that's a metaphor for the process. We don't fully understand how homeopathy works. There's some fascinating research being carried out now, particularly in Europe and in India, where homeopathy is very popular. And, you know, as this research becomes more refined, I think our understanding of the process of homeopathy will be much more apparent. And also, I mean, I think actually these statistics are out of date. When I say homeopathy is used by over 2 million people worldwide, I think it's closer to 3 million now. And it's acknowledged by the World Health Organization as a valid form of healthcare. Good to know. And in your notes, I think I've put a link to the Homeopathic Research Institute website. The Homeopathic Research Institute is an organisation based in London, and they have compiled, you know, a comprehensive list of the clinical research about homeopathy, and also the research into the mechanisms of homeopathy. So what are the basic principles of homeopathy? Let me move me down a little bit. Number one is the law of similars. Now, here you see there's a little photo of Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy. And one of the essence of homeopathy is that a substance that creates certain symptoms in a healthy person will cure similar symptoms in a sick person. Now, Hahnemann didn't invent this. Herodotus, an ancient Greek historian, made a very similar claim. Hahnemann demonstrated this principle almost by accident. He was a medical practitioner who'd actually given up his practice because he was unhappy with medical practice in his day. So he took to translating medical books, and out of curiosity one day took a medicine that was usually used to treat malaria, and over a couple of hours experienced symptoms very similar to malaria. He repeated this for himself. He tried it out on his colleagues and his family. All had a similar experience. And then he expanded that to look at other medicines, other commonly known medicines at the time. And some examples I can give you, you know, if you chop an onion, usually we get watery eyes, the nose gets a bit runny, maybe a bit itchy in here. So there's a homeopathic remedy based on the red onion, which is one of its uses is to treat colds or hay fever when the predominant symptoms are sort of watering eyes, itchy, runny nose. Similarly, coffee. You know, if you have too much coffee, get a bit buzzy, mind can be sort of, you know, racing with ideas. So we have a remedy based on coffee and one of its applications is in insomnia when there's a real sleeplessness because the head's just buzzing with ideas. And you notice I'm being quite specific with the nature of the symptoms. In homeopathy, we're not so interested in treating in a diagnosis. We're interested in the particular symptoms. So for practically any condition, the remedy needed will reflect the particular symptoms being experienced. Go to the next slide. So the second principle is of simple medicine, and what it really means is we try to prescribe one medicine for one condition, and it's selected to reflect all the symptoms being experienced, all the predominant symptoms being experienced. So we now have a computer program or massive books that basically list every symptom that is, you know, imaginable, and then the remedies that have been shown to help treat that, relieve that symptom. And so you can put a sort of a profile together. You profile the symptoms that someone's presenting with, and through that you look at the remedy that best matches that symptom. in general homeopathy, we're also often looking at the mental and emotional state and any symptoms that might, any sort of trauma that may have happened, any trauma or any, intense experience that may have happened just before the illness began. In relation to flu, I can quickly give you an example. One of my friends had come to me recently suffering from flu. She described her symptoms. I gave her the remedy that best fit her symptoms, and she started to improve. But then a couple of days later, she called me back and she said, I was feeling better, but it's just not shifting. And I took a physical, I asked again for her physical symptoms. And if they were the same, I mean, I couldn't see any justification for giving her a different remedy. So I said, look, before you got sick, in the week or so leading up, did anything happen particularly? Yes, she had a whole story of something that happened that had really, really upset her, really thrown her. And then I don't want to go into details, but it very much, the dynamic of that situation very much matched a remedy that she'd already been prescribed. So I suggested, will you take that remedy? And that seemed to, that worked then. It calmed the, the causing factor. So, if the well-selected flu remedy doesn't work, often we have to dig a bit deeper and find out what might have unsettled your system in order to become susceptible to the flu. Now, here's the really, I guess, controversial aspect of homeopathy. We call it the minimum dose. And you may well have heard homeopathic medicines are prepared by a method of serial dilution and succussion, which is vigorous shaking. We call it potentization. So whether you need this information, the really strange thing is the more dilute, the more potentized the remedy, the deeper acting it is. Now, it doesn't make logical sense to a sort of a rational Newtonian brain, but I would say that homeopathy doesn't follow the Newtonian physics. We're far more in the world of Einstein. So in first aid, which is what we're talking about with flu, you normally just get a 30C or 6X. The little illustration at the bottom of the page tries to explain how this happens. You get, say, we're giving a remedy that's based on a plant. So we make a mother tincture up from the sap of the plant, say. One part of that mother tincture, generally in 99 parts of alcohol and water, is shaken. And that's called a 1C. C is the Roman numeral for 100. Then we take one part, 1C, into 99 parts of alcohol and water, shake it, and that's a 2C. The dilution is now 1 in 10,000. We take another one part of the 2C in 99 parts of alcohol and water, shake, 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 and we've got a 3C. We're now down to 1 part in a million. I can tell you that when you get to a 12C, it's generally understood that not a single molecule of the original substance is likely to exist in that preparation. And kind of understandably, that's why a lot of people criticize homeopathy. But the fascinating research these days is that somehow the healing energy is maintained. There's really interesting exploration being done into the nature of water molecules. And I referred to Einstein before. He says future medicine will be the medicine of frequency. So it's something, nanoparticles, subatomic particles, something is going on that enables the healing property of that substance to be retained. I just want to say that also you can dilute, sometimes, not so often, dilute 1 part in 10, and then it's called an X. It's the same process. So if there's X after the number, it means it's serial dilutions 1 in 10, and the number always refers to the number of times the remedy's been diluted. Okay. So I've kind of referred to this a little bit already. Each homeopathic remedy has a symptom picture. It's like profile. And when we're prescribing a remedy, when we're deciding which remedy to take, we're wanting to match the symptoms being experienced by the person with the problem. We want to match it to the remedy that is most similar symptom picture. Now, and we generally, and the way that works is you don't have to match every symptom that exists in that remedy, but all the symptoms being experienced should be covered by that remedy as well as possible. And the questions we ask, first, where is the symptom? So it's in my nose, it's in my chest, it's in my head, it's in my limbs. And what does it feel like? It feels tight, it feels aching, it feels stinging, it feels heavy. You know, different words are given. Then the next question we look at is the modality, which means what makes it better or worse. So it could be better for moving, it could be better for lying still. The person may be really hot and, you know, want to be uncovered, or they may be really chilly and need to be very warm. We also look in terms under the area of modalities. We can also look at the time of day that the symptoms are worse. We can look at even the season or the weather. They can also play a part. And the final thing we ask is concomitant symptoms. What's also going on? What else is happening? So in the flu, often you might get aches and a sore throat and a headache, maybe a runny nose. So, and with each concomitant symptom, we also want to get a sense of, well, that's the location in a way. So what does it feel like? You know, what's particular about that symptom? So this is how you build up an idea of what the person is experiencing. Because, you know, even with flu, people have different presentations. So we want to be really clear on what this individual person is experiencing so that we can pick the most effective remedy. Now, if you're wanting to get, I think, you know, that I've made up a little kit of 6 remedies that I think are the most commonly needed for flus that I've experienced in recent times. And they come in a little glass vial. Just pick up the vial to show you. No, I'm good. I haven't got my vials with me. So it's a little glass vial about so long. You take off the lid and there's little round sugar pillules in the vial. They're big, maybe 50 within the vial. They're made from sucrose. They're very convenient for traveling in first aid kits because they have a long shelf life, at least 5 years. So that's what we use. That's what I give you. So you've got, if you are interested in a kit, you've got it for a lot. It's going to be good for a good while. Now, usually for a dose, you tip 1 to 2 of the pilules into the lid of the vial. 1 to 2, you know, it doesn't matter. You don't want to have more because it's really wasteful. You try not to touch the pilules with your hand. So that's why you tip it into the lid and then into the mouth. Sometimes you can put it into the hand. The idea is that if you've handled them, you really don't want to put them back in the vial because they're a little bit contaminated. You put them in your mouth and just allow it to dissolve under your tongue. Now, another way of taking them is you can actually dissolve the pilules in a glass of water and like let them dissolve, only take about 15 minutes. And then just take a sip, ideally stirring between each sip. Each sip is actually a dose of the remedy. You, in a way, instead of a 30C, you've now got a 31C, which is going to be as effective as taking the pill directly. So if you've established that this remedy is relieving my symptoms, then it's a much more efficient way. You know, you're going to conserve your supply of the remedy, you put it in water, and it's much easier to take too, rather than having to tip out the pilules every time, which takes practice. So that's a little tip. Now, how often do you take the remedy? This is another place where homeopathy varies from conventional medicine. It's dependent on the severity of the symptoms and, you know, how quickly each individual reacts or responds to the remedy. So we could say in acute situations you take a dose every 2 to 3 hours, but really the guideline is when symptoms start to get worse after an initial improvement. So that could be half an hour, that could be 5 hours. It really, I mean, everyone responds differently to a remedy. So, you know, I give 2 to 3 hours as a really broad guideline. And look, there are cases, if someone's got a really high fever, say, where you need to take the dose frequently. And, well, I don't think I've written it down. Often, at the beginning of dosing someone, when I'm reasonably confident, I might give 3 doses in quick succession, say every 15 or every 30 minutes, to really establish, is this the remedy that's going to be good for the person? And if at the end of that time, the person's feeling much better, well, I'm only going to give them another dose when they start to go backwards. And with children, in particular, this is very easy to observe. I mean, they'll have been, you know, feeling lackluster. The remedy, they take the remedy. They must, usually children only need 1 dose. And suddenly they're up and playing and busy. We're talking about little children generally here. And then they just start to flop down again, and that's when they need a repeat dose. Now, there's 2 important caveats with this. Occasionally, when you take a remedy, it feels like the symptoms are intensifying. Now, I liken this to when you clean out a blocked up drain, the first thing that happens is all the gunk that's in there gets pushed out. So if the person's feeling the symptoms are a bit more intense, please don't take another remedy. You don't need to stir things up. But generally, I would expect within half an hour, in the case of the flu, things should be settling down and should settle down really effectively. It's like there's been a really deep cleaning out. If they don't, if you are concerned, you know, a bit of time's gone by and it doesn't feel like it's getting better, you're very welcome to call me, contact me, or if you've got another homeopath, contact them just to check how things are going. And the other option is there's no apparent or lasting change after 2 to 3 doses. It may you need a deeper acting form of the remedy, a higher potency, or to take the remedy more often, or it may mean it's the wrong remedy. And again, I really encourage you to contact me at that point. It's also very unlikely that the remedy the symptoms will get worse when we're treating something like the flu. And here, look, I would like to say I'm always happy to answer your questions. If you're not certain, much prefer you send me a text. It's the best way of catching me. And just say, look, this is happening. Am I doing the right thing? Because after a bit of trial and error, you'll start to know what you need to do. But it's better to ask now and be sure rather than just sort of give up hope because you're not sure. If it's a situation where the remedy hasn't worked, maybe the person's symptoms actually don't fit any of the remedies in the kit, then I would generally, and I have to do some work to work out what remedies needed, I do charge like $30 for a short 15-minute phone consultation. But look, that's my discretion as to whether I feel like, look, the answer's really straight there. I won't be charging you. Just have to, you know, you'd have to buy another remedy if it's not in the kit. But yeah, if the condition's a bit complicated, then I would need to. Just there's a small charge, and then following through, that's all part of the consultation. So that's your background with homeopathy. We're matching the symptoms to the remedy, and we're repeating as our improvement starts to wane. So let's talk about influenza and homeopathy now. You know, influenza is a highly infectious viral disease. It's usually spread by contact with other people with the condition. And symptoms can include high fever, runny nose, sore throat, muscle pains, headache, coughing, fatigue. Sometimes there's also gastric symptoms. As I've said before, there are many different homeopathic remedies that can be used to treat flu symptoms. I actually asked an online forum of homeopaths what their most common prescription for flu were, the 6 most common remedies they would give, and they all had different remedies in. And I just decided I took that into account, but have really selected the 6 remedies I think you'd be most likely to need, and they're in the little kit that I've put together. So the first remedy we're going to talk about is a remedy called oscillococcinum. And this one is provided in the 200C. Oscillococcinum was developed by a Frenchman in the middle of the last century, and it's known to have an antiviral action. And in this case, he actually prepared the medicine based on his knowledge that it's based on duck heart and liver, and particularly because birds are well-known carriers of the flu. And it's a remedy that's been used very widely in France, in Europe, for many years. And people will often take 1 dose a week during winter to act as a preventative. Some of my clients do this. I haven't ever felt the need to. I feel like staying healthy and is enough. It's also recommended to take that the moment you start experiencing flu symptoms, and particularly suitable for gastric flu. Recently, there was in the States, there was a class action taken out against the company that manufactures oscillococcinum. They claimed there was false advertising. There was no evidence that it was effective in treating the flu. And earlier this year, the judgment was passed down that that class action was thrown out, that it was agreed that there is evidence to indicate that oscillococcinum may reduce the duration of flu. They weren't convinced about the preventative action, but I think the 6 studies, and the different studies had different outcomes. There's a link to the Cochrane review of these studies if you're interested to look further. But I've included that in the kit because it is such a broadly accepted remedy for flu. And before that class action existed, online you could find a lot of articles talking about how in France, where this is a popular flu preventative, there's very low incidence of flu. All that got taken down with the class action, and it hasn't started creeping back yet because it's only been quite recently that happened. Now, in your notes, I'd just like to say I've got the remedies listed, the next 5 remedies listed in alphabetical order, but I'm going to go through them in a different order because this is just I'm sort of grouping like remedies together. So the first one we come to is Rhus tox. This is based on poison ivy. If you've ever been walking in the bush, I don't know what they call bush in America, in North America, you'll most probably have experience of poison ivy. Very intense condition. And that's not really relevant now, but what is relevant is that so far the presentations of flu I've seen this year have practically all required Rhus tox. And the most common experience is aching and stiffness through the whole body. There can also be a restlessness, this feeling like you just can't get comfortable. Sometimes it'll happen after exposure to the cold and wet, which makes you think we wouldn't have it in Sydney, at least at the moment, because it hasn't been very cold and it certainly hasn't been wet. Generally, the patient will feel chilly, so they want warm baths, warm drinks, warm covers. There can be, there doesn't have to be, a dry cough. It's quite hoarse and the sensation is tearing. Possibly the nose will be blocked. It doesn't need to be. This one I've never come across, but it's just such a lovely idea that the hot breath burns the inside of the nose. So if you're talking with someone who describes that, well, then definitely this is the remedy. Often there's the throat sore, there's swollen inside. There can be cold sores on the lips. And for me, a really a confirming symptom is that the tip of the tongue can be redder than the rest of the tongue, sometimes very markedly, but usually the tip and maybe the front edge is quite red where the rest of the tongue is pink or even white. So that's Rhus tox. And as I say, it is the remedy that I'm seeing most frequently with flu this season. The other remedy that we are most likely to prescribe when there's aching is a remedy called Eupatorum perforatum. I think in your kit it's most probably just labelled Eupat. I can't quite remember because it's a very long name. Again, it's from a plant. And here the pain is in the bones. Often, if, pardon me, Rhus-Tox isn't working, then the next thing to try is Eupatorum. And they're similar in lots of ways. That the biggest difference is this feeling that the pain is so unbearably intense. I think when the swine flu first came out, I can remember one of my patients saying that she's someone who'd given birth to 2 children. She said, this is the worst pain I've ever experienced. Often it feels better lying on the part that's aching, so the pressure is better. You feel restless again, chilly in the morning. This can be a very dry throat, and maybe the person is thirsty for really cold water. Okay, so Rhus-Tox and Eupatorum, they're the most likely remedies to choose and to be effective if the predominant symptom is aching. Now, the next 2 remedies are really, we see them for sort of heaviness, the head, foggy head sensation. This one, Baptista, is one that I find I sort of identified for myself a couple of years ago, and I seem to get this coming back occasionally. And it's very hard to describe. I mean, the way it seems to me is the head feels weird. In the literature, they say confused and befuddled. I think sort of foggy, just can't think, and concentration's difficult. You can also have the sense of the face is a bit puffy and swollen, though I haven't come across that. It can be a remedy also for gastric flu with nausea and vomiting, and it can come on suddenly. For me, the main presentation has been is this: the head feels weird. I can't be much more helpful than that. But if you've got it, you'll know it. The other remedy that I feel particularly experience in the head is a remedy called Gelsemium. When I first started practicing 17 years ago, this was the most prevalent form of the flu. At the time I described as classic flu, but I don't see this presentation nearly as much these days. The main thing is this heaviness. The body's heavy, the body's tired, the eyelids are droopy, there may be a fever. And look, I'm sorry, all these remedies can have a fever. In homeopathy, fever is so common that it's not really highlighted unless it's a really extreme fever. Here we have a fever, but there's no thirst, is what you're going to note. And the head is where this is often experienced the strongest. Headache can feel like a band around the head, and it's just the head is heavy. If there's a sore throat, it has the interesting characteristic that when you swallow, the pain sort of goes up to the ears. So that's Gelsemium. And finally, the 6th remedy is a remedy called Nux vomica. And the most characteristic aspect of this remedy is chilliness. Chilling from uncovering. The literature says it's if the blood turned to ice. And the more modern thing is that, like, if you're lying under your doona, you just don't want you don't even want a little crack of air to get through because it's unbearable. It feels so chilly. And often someone's more likely to have these symptoms when it's been cold, dry weather. They may have a nose that's runny during the day, but at night it becomes blocked. Often the patient feels worse in the morning or feels, worse from a draft. And there can be a raw, torn, scraped feeling in the throat or the chest. And very often the patient is irritable. So there you are. I'm going to stop screen sharing now and just come back to me. Just want to say again, No, I can't make me full screen. It's fine. I think you can see it. You can see me enough. So if you're interested, like you can do this two ways. If you get one of these symptoms, you're welcome to call me and we can arrange for you to pick up the remedy. Generally, I sell a single remedy at $15. So I put together a kit of these 6 most likely remedies, so you've got them on hand. And for that, I'm charging $55, and that includes express postage. So again, you could pick it up from me here in Chatswood for $45. Before I send out the remedy, though, the remedy kit, I need you to complete a little quiz, which I send you by email. And the reason is there's no point in having the kit unless you understand how to use it. So the quiz is just, I think, 5 simple questions that just enable you to just indicate that, yeah, you've listened to the webinar. Look, you're welcome to use the notes as a cheat sheet, but you've understood the basic principles. You've understood a bit about the remedies. So it will be worth your while to get the kit. I also encourage you, send me an email, send me a text if you have any questions. And look, all the best. May you stay well, or if you are unwell, may you get better very soon. So thank you very much.